back to the Childhood Cancer Perspective, and thank you all for sticking with me through this journey. Today, I'm going to take a little bit of a detour from what we normally talk about when it comes to pediatric cancer, but we are going to stay in the cancer world. And the main reason for that is because, much like anybody that has ever dealt with this or faced it, you realize that cancer is a family diagnosis, and it's not just the person going through it. All of the people that I have spoken to, the families, the organizations, and the medical professionals have all been personally affected by pediatric cancer. But today we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about a parent, a husband that has been affected by this, but more closely to us, which is brain cancer, which is unfortunately something that is very misunderstood and underfunded, to be completely honest with you, all the way across the board. So today, my guest is Blair, and I was able to follow her story and her husband's story through TikTok, which is a love-hate relationship, but it does provide us with some really good support in the community and a way to share our stories. So Blair, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. It was really such an honor when you reached out.
Well, it's absolutely. I love to, I don't love meeting people this way, but at the same time, it is a community that I've never felt stronger to be a part of. Once you're in it and once you meet the people that are personally affected, it really is a support level that you just can't find, even sometimes with loved ones. So I want you to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll kind of get into how this story came to be. And so the floor is yours.
Okay. So I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I have two kiddos. I say kiddos, they're not even really little anymore. My oldest is actually 23 years old, and getting married later this year. And then I have a 13, almost 14-year-old, as our youngest. I work for myself. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for, my gosh, 12, 13 years or so. I've been working with coaching women, doing kind of like life and business coaching for a long time. But obviously when things started unfolding with my husband, I obviously just completely stopped everything and been pouring all my energy and focus into supporting my husband, supporting his journey, supporting both my children. My youngest is also autistic, so being able to support him with his own emotions and everything that's going on top of being a 13-year-old boy, in middle school is not easy. And then getting a diagnosis like this for his father has been obviously very difficult for him. And I've just been pouring my heart and soul right now into doing everything I possibly can to use my voice to share our story on TikTok. And just hopefully through sharing our story, it's going to lead to some level of change that can better the odds for families like mine, children, anybody who has been impacted by brain cancer. I really, truly want to be able to make a difference in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And I think that we echo each other in that matter, is that using your voice and your personal experiences can truly, because you never know who's listening, can make a difference in that next person that is going through it. And much like us and a lot of other families, and that you tend to be on an island when this diagnosis comes through. You're not personally connected to people that have felt this. Not everybody is. And you're always looking for, who can I reach to, who can I ask questions to? And this is kind of the hope of not only social media and this podcast, but just in general, being able to use your voice and connect. And it's such a huge opportunity to be able to do that. So I value being able to meet people that way, and I value being able to listen and see things that maybe even I didn't think of, and maybe we put ideas out there that you didn't think of, and it can just enact that change at some point.
Yeah, I do think there's something very special when people allow themselves to share their stories very vulnerably. It's definitely something I've learned over the last 13 years of just sharing my own story and putting myself out there in different aspects of life. It really started just even talking about my journey as a mother or postpartum depression, different health struggles that I've gone through. And the biggest thing that I've seen is that healing really comes in community. And when we're able to really feel supported and seen by somebody else who is going through something similar to us, because it does feel very isolating and lonely when you're going through something very difficult, especially something like this. I was shocked at the amount of friends and family that completely just dropped off the face of the earth. It just seemed like they didn't even care what we were going through. And it was unbelievably heartbreaking. And it just felt like we were completely abandoned in a moment that we desperately needed people. And the minute I started allowing myself to share very openly on social media, the support and the outpouring that I started receiving from the cancer community, the brain cancer community, the pediatric cancer community has been absolutely amazing. And that's why I strive even more, because I want to be able to support this community as much as I can, because they've poured so graciously back into me and my family.
Yeah, I think unfortunately the support thing, I was actually just watching a video that a very good friend of ours posted before this, and it's about that. The support, for whatever reason, it can come in really hot and heavy in the very beginning, and then it can just go away very, very quickly. Whether it's because the person has rang the bell, whether the person has passed away, or their end of treatment, or it's just too hard to be around what's going on. And listen, it is, right? It's incredibly hard to, your life is turned upside down and you're trying to create a new normal. And when you're either, dealing with a child having this, or you have kids and you're trying to explain what's going on, and it's a lot. And I get it can be a lot for people, but I've often said too that I would rather everybody not leave, say the wrong thing, let me correct you, versus ghost us and just go away. Because the reality is we need the support more now than ever. And it really just is a shame. And it's something that's not talked about a lot, I don't think, is that support. It comes from a lot of different places, but the people you thought were going to be there are the ones that disappear the fastest.
Yeah. And that's the thing I hear all the time too, when I'm talking to other families that are going through this, that they were just abandoned by people. And that's just is so heartbreaking. But I've had people say it to me, they just didn't know what to say. So they said nothing at all. And I was like, okay. So you made it actually more about you and your discomfort and your feelings than really recognizing how that was going to impact me and my family by just saying literally nothing. Or when we do talk about it or say something, people look at us like we have 5 heads. I can see literally that they are so uncomfortable. And I try my best to be like, I get it. This probably makes you uncomfortable, or you don't know what to say to me. Well, guess what? I don't know what to say either. Like, there is no handbook that somebody gives you when you're given a terminal brain cancer diagnosis. They don't go, and here's how you now deal with your life and handle every single situation. This is how you talk to your children. This is how you handle work. This is how you balance everything. This is how you handle grief. So I'm learning as I'm going too. And I get it. Like, other people, the shock wears off for them and then they get to go back to their normal life. I don't get to go back to a normal life. My normal is not normal anymore. And we don't even know what that even looks like, because every single day we think we get a grasp on kind of like semi-normalcy, something happens and, we're drowning in the grief, or we're having symptoms coming up that are terrifying for us. And it's just a constant, you never know. And it's debilitating some days.
Oh, 100% it is. There, you hear it growing up, right, as a kid, or you hear it all the time that tomorrow's never guaranteed. But then when you're really faced with a situation like this, where it really is not guaranteed, and you have no idea how many more tomorrows that you have when you're going through this, and you're just trying to live every day to the fullest and still be a normal, productive member of society, so to speak, and go to school events, or you're going to whatever, you're trying to live that normal life, but it's not normal anymore, because everything you're putting almost 1% of yourself into that, and 99% of yourself into fighting this battle, or being next to your husband when he's going through this, or answering your children's questions when they don't understand something. And people don't see that. They don't. And they also see, the one thing we hear in this community is, well, they're kids, they're strong, they'll bounce back. Well, no, they won't. Or their hair grew back, right? So they must be okay then. It's all perception that people see it from the outside. And if they're not affected by it personally, I think we're all in some way connected to cancer, maybe, from a generation or two or whatever. You're all connected. When you're personally having it in your own household, it is such a different thing. And people just don't see that. They look at it and they see you smiling or happy, or you post a funny TikTok or something. Oh, things must be okay. Things must be all right. No, we are just really good. And I think this goes for you as well. I think we're just really good at showing you what we want you to see. And what you don't see when that camera goes off is a lot of emotions that I think would break most people.
Yeah. And I try my very best to give a snippet of what that actually looks like, to give that perspective, because I think that is what social media is. It's this kind of curated, picture of what everybody's life is, and oh, isn't this beautiful and amazing, and this, that, and the other. We're taking snippets of journeys like this and we're trying to put these positive spins on it and being like, right now I must hear all the time, well, at least at least you know. So you have this time together to build all the memories. Like, be grateful for that. I'm constantly being told what I should be grateful for and what I should be happy about. And if I am showing a grief moment or I am sad, it's somebody's trying to put a positive spin to like shift me to something positive, because people don't want to see hard things. They just want to kind of ignore it. And a lot of times that's social media. They just, maybe they want to get on there and scroll and they just want to like see comfort scroll. They don't want to see the hard things. And I think, I'm doing a huge disservice if I don't show the reality of what a cancer diagnosis really entails, because people need to understand this. And especially when it comes to certain cancers that are getting very little funding, very little research, very little attention, they need to understand the impact that this is happening. And I hear many parents in the pediatric cancer community saying this, where they're like, everybody keeps saying, well, at least they're young, or, they're so cute and they're strong. Kids are so resilient. And I'm like, no, like, they don't fully understand the weight of what this means for that family, for this child, for the longevity of their life and for years to come. And I get it. They just don't understand their words and what that means. But that just, again, reinforces to me why I have to speak up and say and use my voice as best I can, so that people understand this and they understand why it's so imperative that we get better education and understanding and research and funds leading to, supporting these families.
Yeah, it's people see what they want to see, and it's unfortunate because we're under the shadow of rare, which is a word that I will fight people over, because it's not. And I say it because not obviously for us with the pediatric cancer world, but just in cancer in general, I don't think you can walk 2 steps outside of your house and not see somebody or meet somebody that is connected to it. There's nothing rare about what's going on. The reality, the rarity is the people that listen. The rarity is the television time or whatever that we get with what's going on. And it's a shame because unfortunately everybody loves a good sad story, a good sob story, right? And if you tell it the right way, you'll get more views. But at the same time, it's not about getting you to understand how I feel. It's not about getting you to feel what we feel, because I don't want people to feel this. But you need to understand that it's real and it's getting worse. It's not getting better. And keeping all, politics and all that stuff out of it, it has been bad for a long, long time, decades and decades. And we're not seeing any positive movement. And it sucks because, I know that most of, the research that they receive for adults, in certain types of cancers actually comes from things that they found out through researching kids, but that doesn't fall backwards. We don't get that same type of, with us, it's 4% of funding and less than 1 goes to brain cancer. Brain cancer is the deadliest form of pediatric cancer, and it's misunderstood. It's not funded, and because we don't know why it happens. For adults, and you can talk about this more. Like for adults, sometimes, not always, you can attribute it to lifestyle or a choice or even where you've lived, that kind of thing. For kids, it's shitty luck. There is literally no understanding as to why it happens. And you can't associate, a child at 6 years old with liver cancer to heavy drinking for 20 years.
Yeah.
You can't, a lung cancer, you can't say, well, they were a smoker. Our daughter had brain cancer. Well, we didn't live near power lines or eat weird stuff or, have a family history. It just happens. So, that's the biggest issue, is that cloud that kind of hangs over us, right? That, well, they're working on it. They're figuring it out. They're doing this, they're doing that, but are they really? And are they focusing their efforts in the right places?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I went with that. And so, kind of tell us a little bit about, your husband's diagnosis and if there were any kind of factors that they could link to why it happened.
Yeah. So my husband, he's young. He's 38 years old. I'm actually 6 years older than him. I'm his Puma. We used to joke, like to joke around. But yeah, he normal, healthy guy per se. It's not like he was doing anything particularly that we would say like, oh, this is, something he was doing lifestyle wise that would have contributed. He played sports for much of his life. He played football for a long time. Actually, when I first met him, he was playing semi-pro football. And so some of the symptoms actually he was displaying before we knew that these were symptoms that actually were coming from his tumor, he always was just kind of like, I've had my bell rung many times. He was offensive lineman. So he was getting hit multiple times through games, pretty hard. So we always just kind of thought like, just normal, short-term memory kind of thing. I've had a fair share of concussions. And then, he woke up just like one day on Halloween, woke up, was kind of feeling a little off, went to work, could not read his emails. Just all of a sudden, literally out of nowhere, couldn't read his emails, and went to the hospital that night to get evaluated, found his brain tumor that night. And the very next day on his 38th birthday, he was having the tumor removed. So, I mean, when I say it happened fast, like it was happening so ridiculously fast. Like you're talking just normal, healthy guy, not having really any symptoms, alarming symptoms at all, to all of a sudden he's, 38th birthday having, major brain surgery and he's in the ICU. It took almost 3 weeks. It was like the day before Thanksgiving is when we got his pathology report back, and it was called a grade 4 astrocytoma IDH mutation, which depending on who you talk to, doctors, stuff like that, because they've just kind of changed over in the last couple of years how they classify grade 4s. All grade 4s used to be classified as a GBM or glioblastoma, is how most people hear them called, though a glioblastoma can have either what's called a wild type or IDH mutation. So now they've just classified them as a glioblastoma wild type or an astrocytoma IDH mutation. What that actually means is that the IDH mutation that they have found, it helps with the prognosis a bit. It allows for the tumor to be a little bit more responsive to chemo treatment. It's still not very responsive. It's still not a good prognosis, and make it to maybe 2 to 3 years. Less than 5% are making it to 5. The things that my husband does have in his favor is that, again, he's 38 years old. So that's probably the thing we hear all the time. Well, he's young, he's 38. He played sports. We are hopeful that he can make it to a 5-year outcome. That's what we hope for. But again, with brain cancer, what's misunderstood, people hear that number and they think, oh, you're going to get 5 great years, make the most of them, all this stuff. We don't know what the kind of quality of life is going to look like over these next 5 years, because brain cancer can come with a load of different deficits and issues. Anything could shift between now and then and could greatly impact his ability to walk, talk, be able to function like a normal adult would. And, it can be a really horrific disease that really can shift even somebody's personality and who they are, and can change them completely into a different person. So it's a lot of unknowns, and it's really scary to think about. We are currently working with, we go to Mayo Clinic here in Phoenix, and we're currently working with their geneticist to see if there is anything that they can pinpoint or find genetically for him. As of right now, they're saying the same thing that you're saying. They just don't know, right? They have no clue why this is happening. They can't really determine. They can guesstimate. They can try to say maybe this, maybe that, but they just don't have any concrete evidence of anything. And I think that's even the most infuriating thing, to think that they have been researching brain cancer for, I don't even know how many decades at this point, and it's the same treatment. They have no other options for treatment. It's the same treatment as it was 20, 30 years ago. They don't have very many advancements, and they still have no answers. They know that obviously the blood-brain barrier creates a little bit more of an obstacle for chemo to be able to access the tumors. They also know that the tumors are very complex. They're very smart. They learn and they will mutate so that they become less resistant to treatment, making it that much harder to treat. So it's like they know all the reasons why the cancer is so horrible and so debilitating, but they still don't have answers of how to then at least give people more, at least quality years to help with symptoms or deficits that they occur over the years of either the tumor or treatment or even the surgeries that people are having.
Yeah, it's when you think about, you listening to or watching people go through cancer treatments and through anywhere aside from anywhere below the neck, and you figure, okay, it's going to affect this, it's going to affect this, and they'll be able, you move forward with your life, or you're going to have side effects and things like that. But we're talking about the brain. We're talking about the central, the engine of your body that's telling everything what it needs to do, that affects who you are, affects how you think, how you live. And unfortunately, anything that is in there that is not supposed to be is causing trauma to your brain. And what people, I think, are missing is that, again, that blood-brain barrier, that's a whole nother topic. That's something that, going through treatment with our daughter, it wasn't until the last ditch effort that I even knew it was a thing, and that the treatments they were giving were going, again, everywhere from here down, and nothing was breaking through. And
Mhm.
to me, I look at it and say, well, then why were we doing it? Because you're just affecting the rest of her body that is not having an issue. But yeah, everything that's going on, even if did he have a total resection of the tumor?
They want to say they got about 80 to 85% of the tumor. His was located in his temporal lobe, kind of going almost into his optic nerve, and it was gonna start going into some other very vital areas of the brain. So they felt like they got the bulk of it that was actually lighting up within the MRI when they did the contrast. They felt like they got that part of it. But again, when it comes to glioblastomas, they are like little tentacles, right? They spread out into the brain. That's what most people don't even realize too, is there's so much microscopic little pieces of it that even when somebody says, oh, they got a 100% resection, people in the brain cancer community, we know, but is it really, especially with certain types, you can't bank on that because there's so much they can't see. Mhm.
But, the resection, that's great. But again, if it's not all out of there, all it takes is one cell to really break free and to kind of spread and do what it's going to do. That's what cancer does. So yeah, we're dealing with decades old treatments that don't reach the areas, and the treatment that you can have, radiation, which again, it has its own set of side effects that are being, shot into that area. And anytime you're messing with your brain, no matter what, even if, you survive and live 40, 50 more years, the effects of what you're dealing with, again, are so much more connected to the treatment than they are the cancer itself. And that's, I think, the biggest problem that we have, is that we can't get people to come in and figure this out. And we know we've got smart people in this world that can
Right.
figure this out. And you can understand all of the different aspects of why it happened or how it's happening, but you can't understand how to get rid of it. And that's the biggest problem. And I know that most of these treatments, they seem like darts on a dartboard, and they're hoping. And it's honestly not the oncology teams, it's their toolbox. It just doesn't have anything in it. And unfortunately, I think they say too much: make memories. There's not much more we can do. We'll do the best that we can, or the prognosis is not good. And these are not things that you want to hear as a child or as a 38-year-old. Like, you've got your whole life ahead of you, and this is not what you want to hear, that go out and make memories. Like, that's not, I mean, yes, you want to go make memories, but not because you're making them to fulfill a list, you know?
Yeah.
And I've been watching the videos. Number one, obviously, and ours did too, your social media changes when that diagnosis comes, right? Before, it's not that content, it's other things, and it's having fun, it's smiling, it's being, whatever. And then it shifts. And for me, I love the education side of it, because you're telling it as a personal perspective and allowing that kind of to get out there. And you chose to do it this way, and kind of like, I guess you would call it like diarying what's happening, what's going on. Now, you also have had, talking about like the bucket list, things that you want to get done. Things that you want to get done is, now the Viper thing was awesome, by the way. That was great. When you can truly make somebody smile, and what it does is it takes your mind away from everything that's going on, which is the greatest thing out of that entire story, or that entire video, is that nothing else is going on in the world right then except smiling and having a good time and experiencing something that, no matter what, you may never get to. And that is amazing. So tell us more about this bucket list and what else is on there.
It's a great question. So, yeah, my husband, pretty early on, right, when they give a terminal diagnosis like this, his care team started talking to us about, hey, try to make the memories do the things. I remember his oncologist team had come to us near the end of radiation, his radiation and chemo combined that he was doing. And they said, that you have a month break off after we stop the radiation. You got about a month. We kind of let everything calm down before we go into the year-long oral chemo treatment that he is currently within right now. And she's like, go do something fun, go spend time with family, go take a trip. This is the best time to do it, because once we head into this next year, there's so many unknowns. We don't know how he's going to respond to treatment, and just you want to do something special for yourself. So we ended up going to Maui, which is where we actually got married, on a beach in Maui. We took our kids, and my oldest brought his fiance with him, and we went there and spent about, I think it was like 8 or 9 days. And then we went down to the beach that we got married, just me and him, and just kind of did our own version of a renewal ceremony just for us. And it was a really amazing time to just spend together as a family, and to see my husband smile and, be a little bit more present in the moment. Because up until that point, I mean, as you know, when you get a diagnosis, everything is so fast, right? It's appointment, appointment, appointment. Your whole world is revolving around treatment, and it's very time consuming on top of very emotionally overwhelming. And then we went right into 6 weeks of the chemo treatment, which my husband could not drive at that time either. I was driving him up to the Mayo, which is about 45 minutes plus away from our home. So our whole life revolved around it. So it was a nice break from everything to just soak up that time together as a family. And when we came home, my youngest is in therapy. He was in therapy before this for his autism and things. And she had recommended for him to make a bucket list, and maybe we could make a bucket list together as a family. And so that's when we kind of started planning that out, and realizing that the bucket list at first was kind of also something to hold on to for hope, right? To have something positive in the future, because right now everything we had was doctor's appointments and MRIs, and hoping that we don't see, progression or a reoccurrence. And so we needed something just to look ahead for. And around this time actually is when the news had kind of heard of our story. Newsweek had reached out to me on TikTok. I actually thought it was a fake message, because I was like, who from Newsweek is going to actually message me on TikTok? Because you get all sorts of weird messages on TikTok, right? It's usually the guys that are like, I'll pay you $700, all these weird things, right? So I'm like, this person's not real. But she ended up doing a story on us. And then shortly thereafter, the local news started getting involved. And it was the first local story news that had come out and interviewed us. And she had asked, are you guys doing anything like a bucket list? And at that time, I had not really mentioned a lot. I mean, we had talked about the trip we'd gone to in Maui and how amazing that was, but I hadn't really said anything about it online yet. And so I was like, oh yeah, no, we have a couple things. And so when we were in the interview, she had asked, and my husband brought up his story of how his childhood dream was to own a Viper. Always wanted one. He was joking around with me for years that his 40th birthday, we're getting him a Viper. And I was like, my 40th, we went to Sedona. If I had known, I would have gone a lot bigger on my 40th. I would have asked for something more. And so he said this, just kind of in passing, not thinking anything was going to come of it. Because, he was like, now if somebody owns a Viper, I just want to go for a ride in it. Right. And within days, we had people messaging us. And there's a Viper club here in Arizona that reached out to us. And they were like, we want to meet up with him. We want to show him all the Vipers. They took him to a race course, and they put him into the Viper out on the race course, and the instructor was actually taking him out, and they were doing fun laps with us and drifting all around. It was so much fun. And so that just, again, solidified more of yes, this is what we need to do. We need more moments like this, where we are in the joy, in the moment, even though these moments do carry pockets of grief, because when you're in it, you're starting to realize this is going to be a core memory that we're going to look back on, or these are going to be the videos and the photos that we're going to look back on, or my kids will look back on. And this could be the last, when we were in Maui, my husband kept, is this going to be the last time I ever, see Maui? Things like that. Right. So it's hard, but it's the one positive thing that we try to hold on for hope. So right now, we've been trying to make a list. My husband is very much about adventures. He wants to travel. He wants to see all the things. A big one for us was a trip to Europe. That has been something we've always talked about since the day that we met. I've never been to Europe. It's always been something I wanted to do. He had been to Europe when he was a child, and a couple times, I think, when he was a teenager, and he's always wanted to go back. Well, when I met him, I was a single mom. My oldest at the time was 8, 9 years old. And so we never really got that time that most couples get before having kids. We didn't get that space, right? He went right into being a stepdad. And then we had our youngest, and you have a pretty big age gap. So we always were like, okay, well, when our youngest graduates, that's going to be our gift to ourselves. We're going to be empty nesters, but it's really going to hold that much more specialness for us because we didn't get that time. And so we're going to make that time the best time. And we're going to go to Europe and we're going to have an amazing trip. And when we got this diagnosis, knowing that my son, he's, like I said, he's 13. So the 5-year mark is him graduating. And so my husband's like, I just want to make it to graduation. Can I just see my son graduate? That's what I really want. And then it really started dawning on us that everything else that we had planned for our life, all that stuff that we said someday we're going to do all those things. Someday we're going to have that time where it's just me and him, where it's not pouring all into our kids and doing all those things. So the bucket list is starting to evolve even more into like the things that we said we were going to do and try to do them now as a couple that we know we're going to not have more than likely. So yeah, it's trips. Europe is the big one. Concerts are a big thing. He loves to go to concerts. So we're hoping that we can do some more concerts. One other real big one that's looking like it's going to happen is he plays football, loves the Seahawks. We are originally from Seattle. So if anybody's on here hating the Seahawks, like, what else? Like, you don't understand. The man I have a tattoo from the wedding or from the beach we got married on in Hawaii. That's the logo of it. He has a 12, okay, for the 12th man on his finger for Seahawks. He says his love for me is like his love for the Seahawks. I'm like, whatever, just get the 12. I mean, we did get married on 12/6/12. So, I mean, it does hold some significance, but I was like, whatever, get the 12. So his dad is working to get him to go up for a Seahawks game, hopefully this season, and get him like field passes, like to get on the field and to meet some players and things like that. Just like, anybody who's any fan of any sport, right? This is, again, would be like a huge dream of his to be able to go down there, just meet other football players and talk the game because he misses it so much. So yeah, those are a couple of the things we're working towards.
They're huge, and it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And I'll just put it out there too that we've always wanted to go to Hawaii and we've never been. And so my wife and I never got a honeymoon, and it would be really awesome one day. But again, that's that whole someday we'll do that, someday we'll get to it. And it's, to hear, and like I said, I was kind of, watching and seeing the videos, and that's it hits because it's that someday we'll do that. Someday we'll get to it. But there's things, that we've gone through that you're looking at that means something different now. Like with your kids, it's like, God, I wish you'd just grow up. Yeah, I really do wish you would just grow up. I wish you could.
Yeah.
Don't be so quick to grow up, stay. It's like there's things that you used to say just roll off the tongue that they mean something different now. They affect you differently, and they other people can just say it nonchalantly, like, yeah, whatever, I'll get to it tomorrow. I mean, I'm big on that for mowing the grass. I'll get to it tomorrow, but for big things in your life, like I just want to be able to embrace everything, and you should be able to embrace all of that and do all of those amazing things without worrying about what tomorrow is going to bring, and that's the unfortunate side effect of all of this. The worst side effect of all of it is that we don't know, what we're going to be able to do tomorrow and what's going to happen tomorrow. And I mean, I probably could go on for hours about that, and maybe I will one day, but this is about you guys. This is not about me today. But, so you also had spoken about, how you decided to tell your kids, both, your oldest and your youngest, and things like that, and how you had to approach it a little bit differently with your 13-year-old and things like that. So talk about how, the preparation to be able to tell them, about all this, and really kind of how that went and how they're both kind of dealing with it now.
Yeah. I mean, this is the hardest thing to have to do as a parent, right? To have a conversation like this. My oldest, being that he was 23, he knew right away what was going on. He works late into the evening. So when things were unfolding actually on Halloween, I was calling him. So he knew everything. My youngest, though, oh man, the backlash I got for this when I shared our story for the first time, I was joking around. I was like, I think I'm going to go viral for being the most hated woman right now for leaving her husband in an ER alone on Halloween. Like the amount of messages I got from people like, how could you? He went to the ER by himself. What's wrong with you? You're a horrible wife. But I mean, again, not everybody sees everything on social media, right? And I had to speak on that and share because my youngest, autistic, he was going through a lot already emotionally before everything had happened. He was actually not handling being in middle school very well. Everything with the shift with his schedule was really throwing him off. And he was going through a very deep, dark kind of low, very, a moment most parents are really hoping that their children don't ever have to go through. But unfortunately, he was there and he was having really hard, difficult thoughts. And we were in those weeks leading up to Halloween, really trying to help stabilize him emotionally and mentally. And we had just gotten him really back on track. I would really worked heavily with the school to make sure that he was doing well. And so when Halloween happened, Halloween already is like a really big thing for my husband. He loves the holiday being, a day before his birthday. So he just wanted his son to enjoy the day and just keep things as normal as possible because we didn't want to stress out our youngest. So he didn't know much of anything that was going on until obviously we knew my husband was going to have surgery. We told him that dad's having surgery. They found, a mass in his brain, but again, I didn't want to give too much information and not have answers for him because I knew he was going to ask tons of questions. And I think the biggest for us was the best piece of advice we had gotten from his therapist was when you are ready to tell him, because of his age, I think that, parents listening to this, you obviously have to gauge how old your kid is. You know your kid better than anyone else. What can they take on? All of those things. Obviously, talk to your own therapist. Don't just do what I do, right? You got to go and talk to somebody, maybe a professional, of the best way to go about this. But that's what we were doing. We were working with other multiple professionals, his school and a therapist and the doctors to try to figure out what was the best course of action to help him. The best piece of advice she gave was like, when you are ready to tell him, you need to answer everything honestly and openly because he's at an age where he's old enough to maybe not fully take on the weight of something like this, but he is old enough to understand, what this means. And if you withhold anything, you have the potential for creating distrust. And then he will have more worry and more fear and more anxiety because he's looking to you guys for that self-regulation. He's looking to you to help calm him down so that he knows when you say there's nothing to worry about right now, he knows that you're saying there isn't anything to worry about. So we waited until after Christmas. It was a couple of days after Christmas is actually when my husband started treatment, and we knew what treatment was going to look like. We had more understanding of his diagnosis. Me and my husband had also worked through some of our own grief. Not like we worked through all of it, but we weren't, still in the depths of just receiving the blow of that kind of diagnosis. We had had about a month or so to kind of work through it ourselves. And then we sat down and have the conversation with him. Now, again, before that conversation, I was doing a lot of things on the back end to just buffer as much as I could. I was working with his school. I had conversations with every single one of his teachers, anyone who had a touch point with my son, from the nurse to the front office to anybody who was out. I mean, literally anyone and everyone that I knew was going to have any level of interaction. I wanted them to know what was going on so that they knew how to somewhat best support him if he had something come up when he was at school, because we knew it was going to happen. And I wanted them to be prepared while also having a better understanding of what he was going through emotionally. So when he is in class, if he's having a moment, that everybody was well aware of this and they weren't trying to put too much on him. We had the therapist already lined up. I had picked up some like weighted stuffies. They have these like stuffies that are like a weighted blanket, but as a stuffed animal that you can heat up and smells like lavender or something. It's very soothing and very helping regulating with the nervous system. Actually, a lot of the background I do when I was working with clients, I did a lot of like somatic trauma work, working with nervous system regulation. So, I mean, I pulled a lot from my own toolbox of tools and things to prepare to give him. And so, even that month kind of leading up, I was working with him a little bit and giving him more resources. So, when we kind of gave him the news, we could pull from some of those things of regulation tools to better support him. But yeah, when we told him what was going on, I mean, the kid is very inquisitive. He's very quick and smart. And he was already asking very big questions. Like, he was like, what stage is it? And what's the prognosis? And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I was like, we're not supposed to lie. We're supposed to be honest. But how do you sugarcoat something like that to a 13-year-old? I will say the first month to 2 months were very emotionally difficult for him. He was missing a lot of school. When he was at school, he has a resource teacher there. He was going into their room pretty much every day, if not multiple times a day. He was usually starting school late, coming home early. He wasn't sleeping well. That's another thing that parents need to understand is that your children, and I mean, this could even look like right for siblings of, because I know a lot of your audience is pediatric cancer. So you're looking at the siblings and the stress that they're having, dealing with news like this for their sibling. They can revert into childlike behaviors depending on what age they are. So we were told that don't be surprised if, they can like wet the bed, they can have sucking of thumb or behavior, they can start acting like very, very young. And for my son, it actually started presenting as sleep regression, and he wanted to co-sleep with me. Thankfully, we have a guest bedroom with a king size bed in it. So me and my 13-year-old moved in to our guest bedroom, and we slept in there for, I don't even know how long, probably 2-3 weeks. I think we slept in that room. Still periodically, he will have moments that are really difficult and he'll want to sleep with me again. So I'm just kind of giving him what he needs and trying to support him the best way I can. But again, there's like no rule book here. It's, I've had many parents, man, can parents really shame another parent when they're making decisions of what they think is best for their kids? So I'm doing my best to share all of the things while also understanding that people sure are going to have a lot of opinions about how we're trying to support the kids.
Yeah, trust me, whatever you're doing is wrong in somebody's eyes.
Yes.
So how you're parenting, how you're treating them, how you're exposing them to information, and everybody is an expert. How your husband's cancer came, it's probably something that you fed him. It was, you know what I mean? It's everybody's an expert. Everybody's got something to say. And unfortunately, everybody has something to say on stuff they have no idea about, and they feel like they have to comment. It's just an urge that they have to fulfill. And it really is a shame because you're doing the best you can with the tools and the knowledge and the energy that you have, and it doesn't require any outside input. We love in this community. We absolutely want to fly a flag for unsolicited advice. If we didn't ask, then we don't want it. Yeah, so just so you know, if we want advice, if we want information, we will reach out personally and ask for that advice or things of that nature. But the reality of it is, in this situation, you're the only one that can decide what you need and what your kids need, and it's not up to anybody else. And it really just is a shame that everybody feels like they have to be involved, other than the best thing you can do for us, for any family going through this, no matter what stage, no matter what part of life, is just be there. Just be a friend. That's it. Honest to God, that is the best thing. If it's just calling on the phone and saying, hey, can I go get your groceries for you? That's the best thing you can do. We don't need you to tell us how to fix it. We don't need you to tell us what's wrong. We just need you to be there and be a human that is decent and that does not involve you telling us why we are terrible.
Yeah. And I want to add on to that. I think it's really important for people to understand, like, when you offer the support that you actually know you can give. Because I think that some people, they want to offer things up, and then, but do they really mean that they're going to follow through on that? Like, I think it's really important to offer the things you can provide and give to somebody. And I think it is important to give in that way and saying, like, this is what I can do for you, because I don't know. I mean, and I'm sure you can echo this, especially in the very beginning, your brain is just, you can't make any other decision for anything. I mean, you're so overwhelmed with all the decisions you're trying to make for your loved one's well-being, and you're being asked the biggest questions you've ever been asked, and you're dealing literally with life and death, conversation. If somebody comes to me and they're like, how can I help you? I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know how to help myself right now. And you want me to tell you how to help me? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know what to make for dinner right now. I don't know how to do, I don't even know how to start the laundry. Like, no, just
Yeah.
offer support, or yes, be present. Just
Yeah.
be there.
Yeah, 100%. And the reality of it is too, is that I will tell you, and maybe you're like this too, but my wife and I are the absolute worst at asking for help.